The materials I'm using to create these layers and snoods are, starting on the left hand side, there's some clear sellotape or scotch tape. I've got two types of line. To make the eyes and the antennae for the shrimp I'm using 50 pound monofilament, and then to tie the knots and create the snood line I'm using 35 pound monofilament. You can see some clear plastic tubing there, that's aquarium tubing, it's 6mm or quarter. I've got some super glue, some black acrylic paint, a bit of nail varnish that can be clear, in this case it's got a bit of glitter in it. I've got a red Sharpie permanent marker, cigarette lighter, sharp knife, pair of scissors, and hooks wise I'm using 4 2/0 O'Shaughnessy nickel plated hooks, and also one of these which is a synthetic duster, and I'm going to be using the fibre to create the body of the layer. To create the eyes I'm using a piece of 50 pound monofilament, probably about 4 inches. I'll trim it down later, but what I'm going to do is take some of this acrylic black and just drop a bit on the end, and then taking a lighter I'm just going to basically set fire to it and blow it out. That should take a few minutes to harden up. Really don't touch it before then, but what happens is the acrylic gets taken into the melted plastic and it becomes permanent. Let's do the same on the other end. You just, once they've cooled for a couple of minutes you can fold it over and you've got your two little shrimp eyes. So to create the mouth parts or feelers on the shrimp, I've taken again a piece of 50 pound monofilament and I've just put it in my mouth and bitten it. I couldn't show that bit on film, it's just too gruesome. So I'm just going to cut that in half, and then with a Sharpie marker I'm just going to kind of give it a rough colour. And this is just so when the light hits it it'll kind of pick it out, and then just wipe it. What should happen is most of it will stay in the little ridges I've made. There we go. So to start assembling I'm going to put a little tab of sellotape on my hook, and then take my two eyes and kind of position them on the shank, on the top of the shank, and just fold over my sellotape, give it a wrap around. So this is the chance really to get things right now, well, before we start whipping. So I'm going to kind of get my eye position as equal as I can. Yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. So then I've got my two long antennae or feelers, or I'll stick one side and one the other. I'm going to put them on the underside and again wrap the tape, what's left of it round, and just kind of fiddle with them till I'm happy that they're kind of in the right position and sticking out the same length and the same angle on both sides. So when you're kind of happy that's all in the right place, I'm just going to take some super glue just to hold the position really. Just put it on both ends and let it work its way in. You're going to have to leave that to dry for a few minutes. I'm going to come back to it once it's dry. So I'm going to get a pair of scissors in there and just cut this the tail ends off here at the back. There we go, and that should be it. Obviously the knot is going to bind everything together. So to create the legs and the body I've snipped out some fibre from my duster, about 2 inches, just a pinch really, and I'm going to just singe the edges and then flatten it so it holds together. To begin tying I've got my hook again clamped in my fingers, and I'm going to bring my body material and just kind of pinch it to the underside of the hook shank. Let's see if I can get it there all together. So to form the snood and bind all the materials to the hook, what I'm going to do is take 200 or 300 ml of line and pass it through the top of the eye, and then back through the bottom. That's going to give me a loop. I'm just going to push that underneath my thumb there and thread my tag end through that first loop. Hang on. Tag end through the first loop. That's going to give me 2 loops. I'm going to pull this first loop, this loop that goes, line that goes back to the spool up, not too tight. Then just flatten this down and get a grip. And then taking the line that goes back to the spool, I can just wrap. And that'll bind everything together. Once I'm happy, I'm going to trim this line back to the spool. Change hands. And I'm going to thread the tag end through that loop against the shank there. And then pulling on the other end, I'm going to pull a knot off. There we go. So you can find your tab end in all the mess. You can just trim that. See if I can. There we go. And as an added measure, I'm going to put some nail varnish on. And this has got bits of glitter in. Clear will do. Coloured if you've got it. Whatever you've got really. It's just going to hold the knot. Soak through. Hold everything together, add a bit of protection. To create the outer body of the layer, the shell as it were, I'm using this 6mm tubing, which is aquarium tubing. So what I want to do is kind of measure the distance from just kind of past the hook eye to just by where the eyes are. And I'm going to make that cut there at quite an angle. There we go. And then I'm going to make the tail, again I'm going to come in at an angle and almost taking out a diamond as it were. Deeper with that there. There we go. And then between these 2 points here, I'm going to take a sharp knife, and this is going to be the bottom, so I'm going to make a little incision for where the legs are. Just try and keep that in a line between those 2 points. And finally, before I put it on, it's back in the mouth to give it some bite marks. There we go. I'm just going to open up that tail as well, which is still connected. So I'm back with my layer head, and what I'm going to do is take the snood and pass it through. And then work this up. So hopefully the eyes are just sticking either side of that point there, Let me just go up a bit more. So taking another hook, I'm going to turn it upside down and reach the point into that slit that I made on the underside. Start pulling some hairs out to make my legs. There we go. Right, it's just a case of as much as you want. And then what I'm going to do is just trim these a bit shorter. There we go. Doing some sharper scissors and everything. Finally, sometimes I like to just stick a bit of where I made the joints. Let's just put some stripes with a marker. There we go, little sabiki shrimp. So once you've finished your 4 layers and snoods, you can move on to assembling the rig, and that's shown on a separate video. There should be a link appearing.